Welcome to Nice Ashes. I'm Mike.
And I'm Nate. What are we smoking, Mike?
We are going to smoke the CAO Black. It's a cigar that I've never had, and it looks really good. It's a torpedo, and we've had good luck with torpedoes.
Yeah, and this one has a cedar wrapper on it.
Yes, very good shelf appeal.
All right, I'm lit.
Me also.
First few puffs pretty good.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I thought we'd talk about a wide range of topics, but kind of wanted to start with tattoos. And what do you know about tattoos, Mike?
I know that I don't have any tattoos. I've never felt the need to have one, I guess. Once we get to 100,000 subscribers, I'll get a Nice Ashes tattoo.
Perfect. I also don't have any tattoos. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on them?
Well, I've looked up the history of tattoos. There's been famous tattoo enthusiasts in the past.
Okay.
So mostly circus performers.
Yeah.
And they used to be associated with the military and the Navy. But I don't really have an opinion. Sarah has a couple tattoos. My Sarah does, and your Sarah does as well. And I'm not against it by any means, but I've never felt the need to have one.
Oh, yeah. Let's say that I was giving you the runaround there for a little bit. And we're going to talk about the legality of some of this stuff in a few moments, but I wanted to get your opinion on how old do you think people should be allowed to go get a tattoo?
Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure if we talked about it. We're kind of changing our legal restrictions on things for age. When they raised the smoking age up to 21, I thought, well, that's interesting. So if we're going to say you can't smoke or drink until you're 21, you probably shouldn't be allowed to do a whole lot until you're 21, as far as dangerous things or permanent things, including joining the military, potentially driving a car, possibly working full-time. If we're going to say that the age of majority is 21, then that needs to be consistent.
Yeah, and you don't get to just pick and choose, right? Like, you don't get to say, well, we could exploit them in the workforce before that, but they can't do any of the fun things normal adults can do.
Yeah, I agree with that, because at least around here, if you're 14 or 15, you can't work past 9 o'clock at night, but you can work a 40-hour week.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know about that. And then once you're 16, I don't think there are any rules. Maybe it's not after midnight or something. It's been a while since I was that age, so I can't remember the rules anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so you think probably, 18, 21. So we do have, I'm not sure if it's nationwide, but I think it's illegal to tattoo a minor, anyone under 18, even with parental consent.
Oh, really?
The law is pretty strict.
That's interesting.
In that sense, because the other thing that I wanted to ask about was, let's just go with the straight up general earlobe piercing. What age do you think somebody should be allowed to get their ears pierced?
Now that is interesting, because a lot of parents take their small children, typically girls, to get their ears pierced.
Yes.
And my ears are pierced, and I didn't get my ears pierced until I was 18. So, that's honestly, I would say that is probably should be 18 as well. If we're going to be consistent, you know what I mean?
Yeah, if we're going to be consistent, I don't know. There's some different laws depending on the states for ear piercing. A lot of ear piercing places say they will not do ear piercing until the child can make an informed decision themselves, which I think a lot of them have agreed on, maybe like 8 and up. There are parents who do want their newborns, to pierce their newborns' ears. And of course, that raises a whole bunch of different issues, but, body autonomy is one of them, because the infant doesn't have a choice. I guess kind of like circumcision in most cases.
I would say that's very similar. I mean, it's not, I would say ear piercing isn't as dramatic, but it's similar.
Well, it's similar. It's maybe not quite as dramatic as a tattoo, or if you were talking about the circumcision. But I think that the piercings are a little less taboo socially or culturally than tattoos, because a majority of women and a fair amount of men have ear piercings. And I don't think, I mean, depending on the types of earrings that you wear, I don't think anyone's ever said, look at that tacky person with their pierced ears, at least not in modern times. Right. Whereas people with tattoos, you know, you go to like a job interview or something, or you try and wear long sleeves to cover them up or whatever you might do because they're not as socially acceptable. Although I think they're getting there.
They're getting there, but certainly if you're going for a professional job, you're going to want to not have tattoos on your face or hands.
Yeah, and it's similar, I think, with the earrings and like professional dress for men. If you're going to an interview, you know, you probably don't want really loud earrings, just like you wouldn't want a really loud tie at least for the initial interview, right? You want to try and be a little more conservative just because you don't know the vibe of the place.
Yeah, if you're a man, you probably want to pull your earrings out for the interview.
Well, that too.
And determine the culture before you, depending on how much you want the job, of course. But it's still not necessarily acceptable for men to have earrings.
Yeah.
Which is whatever. It's just the way it is. But
yep. So what are you thinking about the black so far, the CAO Black?
It's good. Not incredible, but very respectable.
No, it's tasty. It's kind of right in the middle, I would say. Not overly light and not overly dark.
Yeah, it's a very good stick, but it's not like we've had a few where they're exceptional from the very start.
Yes.
And this is good, but it's not like
yes.
insane.
And you know, it can change, it can get better. So we'll see.
Oh, sure.
Now,
sure.
What if you said, or what if I told you, Mike, that I was merely trying to lure you in to a giant debate that we're about to have?
Okay, about tattoos and piercings.
Would you be excited?
Sure. I would like also to mention, because I thought about this, that in many states you have to be 18 years old to tan in a tanning bed.
Oh, okay. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So here comes the bombshell. A few days ago, as of our recording of this episode, so this will be a couple weeks ago now for your listeners, Nebraska passed a ban on gender-affirming surgery for minors.
I thought this is where it was going. Okay. I would have to know the details of that.
And so, well, we're going to get into that. But I want to tread carefully here because we're not trying to make fun of transgender people, and we're not trying to say that this surgery isn't needed. I'm trying to bring some logic and rationality into this because we have these other things, tattoos, ear piercings, tanning, that are all, I mean, I don't want to say like cosmetic and like minimize gender affirming surgery, but they are like appearance based things for the most part. And We've already said, just like tattoos, it's illegal under 18, even if your parent consents to it. Piercings, there's not really there's some laws in different states and things, but it's really up to the piercing shops. And most of those have agreed that they won't do it if your child is too young to make a decision for themselves. And, and I know they're trying to like extend that don't say gay bill in Florida and everything, but the Nebraska trans health bill, some politicians were threatening to filibuster on it, but they voted to advance the bill that would ban gender affirming care for minors. And let's see, I've got the article up here. So one person who's 29 years old said of them passing this, "I am a ball of rage. I have had to go back to therapy when this bill was introduced. I know so many people, so many kids who will be hurt by this." And so there's some parents that were upset because I guess they gave their child gender affirming surgery, and they said, I know they would have killed themselves had they not had the surgery.
That's a very controversial topic, and it's very complex. In general, I'm opposed to giving minors hormones or surgeries to change their appearance.
Yes.
Mostly for consistency's sake. We as a society, we've kind of come up with a few ages where we all kind of acknowledge that before that age, that person can't really be held super accountable for their decisions because they don't have enough information and experience to make those decisions for themselves. So if you can't drive a car or go into a tanning bed, why would you be allowed to take hormones that would alter your natural body process or alter your appearance physically, like having a breast reduction or an implant or something? You know what I mean? It's not consistent.
Yeah. So I guess you could sit there and you can say that tattoos and ear piercings are, purely optional. They're not things that really need to be done. Whereas, and some of the people that were upset about this bill in Nebraska saying that if their child hadn't been able to get the gender reassignment surgery, that they would have committed suicide. So there's obviously a lot more, like you said, it's complex issue. There's a lot more feelings and, the core of your being. Like if you're not registering what we're born as or presenting as, I guess, right? Like it's much more mental anguish than choosing whether or not to get a tattoo.
There is what we also, you and I can acknowledge it, and even though I guess it's controversial, there is a certain amount of trans trending going on with young people at this point in time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who have gender dysphoria through puberty no longer have it after they're done with puberty. So for those people, you're screwing them over if you allow them to start altering themselves,
Yeah.
Delaying the gender affirming surgeries and hormones, I guess to me it's a cost benefit analysis. Is it going to hurt more people than it helps by forcing them to wait until they're an adult to make an adult decision?
Yeah. And, I know there's other surgeries that people do for minors, right? Like, I don't know, wisdom teeth removal or tonsil removal or whatever.
That's significantly different than changing your physical appearance.
Yes, I'm not trying to argue that. I'm just trying to bring in kind of all sides. So it's not to say that surgery for minors is illegal, but there are things known as elective surgeries as well.
Right.
So I guess we'd have to look it up if like cosmetic surgery. I would doubt that that's legal for minors.
I would hope it's not. I would hope that you can't give a nose job to a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem... Rhinoplasty seems like something you should be an adult for. Probably even 21. I'm guessing that your bone structure is not done developing until at least then.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. I've never had plastic surgery, so...
Well, me either.
So you were just born an Adonis?
Trying to look up the laws on
oh, sure.
We
have to be very careful. So, we've edited out certain portions of this show before for
we have, and I felt like I really would like to talk about it, but I don't want it to be a yay or nay necessarily. I want to look at it in line with some other things, and sure. I don't mean to be minimizing anything by kind of leading Mike on with the tattoos and the piercings, other than those are things that
people have experiences with.
Yeah. And there's some, experience. There's some, what do you call it when there's like a vast batch of knowledge.
Right. And I haven't read the bill. I did hear something about it. A lot of times these bills, in my opinion, go too far with the rules. It's not just before you're 18, you're not allowed to have gender reassigning surgery. They add addendums to it that makes them cross the line into crazy town. And I don't know if that's the case.
I think that's maybe the big problem. So it looks like minors can get plastic surgery in the United States, but parental consent may be required. And so it looks like parental consent is required for patients under 18.
Sure. And there's a big difference between repairing a cleft palate or something of that nature. And
and I guess to be fair, like I don't know what they're defining plastic surgery as,
Mm-hmm.
If they want I don't even know all the terms. If they want, what do they do when they inject the forehead to tighten it up or something? Like if they want that kind of stuff, it's probably different than if they're repairing a cleft palate or some kind of other accident.
Right. I could see somebody get into an accident and having to have a nose reconstruction, if you're in a bad car accident or something, or a snowboarding fall. You know what I mean? Like, there's things that can happen where I could see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But it's, like I say, if you can't, if we as a society have agreed that you're not even mentally aware enough to be able to tan responsibly when you're 17.
Yeah.
Then we've really said that 17-year-olds are not capable of making decisions for themselves.
Yeah. And that's not to say that, I don't know, because it's weird. I was kind of opposed to the smoking age moving to 21. And I would have been more in favor of, let's just say, the drinking age moving down to 18.
Sure.
And just, the voting age and the drinking age and that stuff, just all the same age. Or make everything 16 or make everything 18. You can't drive till you're 18 or something, I don't know what, but.
Right. I happen to be a fan of that as well. I know that there's been interviews that I've watched with military commanders, and they've asked these guys, what would happen if they raised the minimum military age to 21. And almost universally, they say that there wouldn't be a modern army if they had to recruit 21 and above.
Yeah.
So, and you can be 17 and join the military. You just have to have parental permission.
Yeah, that's true. I'm having some pretty serious draw issues on my cigar here.
Really? I am not at all. Mine's drawing fine, tastes fine. Like I say, it's not crazy good, but it's good.
Yeah.
We've been spoiled. I've been spoiled the last couple cigars that I've smoked.
Yeah, mine is very cloggy, and I took a little bit more off the end, but that wasn't it either.
Weird.
Yeah, I'm getting hardly any smoke in my mouth from this one.
Really? And the end's really lit well?
Yeah.
Huh.
I think I'm forcing through it now. I don't know if there was just a
little tight spot. Yeah, mine's
Maybe.
Fine.
It's still not a terribly great draw, but I'll work through it for you, the listeners.
Yes. Friday night I smoked a CAO Black and a CAO Moontrance.
Okay.
So those are pretty good cigars. I like both of those.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, I was spoiled the last two that I had. But like I say, it's good. I'm pairing it with water this evening for our.
I was debating water, but I decided to go with the powdered dry IPA, double dry hopped from Sierra Nevada. I did a fair bit of drinking last night with our main man, Dev. And he always appreciates these shout outs, so I'm sure the Wednesday that this episode drops, I'll get a little texty poo from Dev.
Nice. Yeah, I had people over on Friday night.
Okay.
And let's just say that my friend was drinking Busch Lights, and I found two of them in my driveway, full.
Okay.
And on the ground.
There you go.
So, there we go.
So, let's go back to this age for gender affirming surgery. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm not opposed to it taking place. I'm opposed to child beauty pageants, but they still happen and people aren't arrested. But I think that, it can't be done lightly. And it's more until they're 18, it would have to be more so on the parents, right? But there's so many parents that don't even talk to their kids hardly,
Right. And children are very susceptible to manipulation.
Yeah.
And, I'm not trying to attack anybody, but some adults definitely have a agenda, either for or against the LGBT community, and they're both committed to that ideology. And I think that they would easily manipulate a child into doing things that they otherwise would not do without that influence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
feel like...
Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel like even when you and I first met, I think I was 25 or maybe I was probably a little younger than that. I don't know. But I feel like I didn't really kind of get a hold of myself until maybe about 25.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And everybody's different. Everybody's different. And, if somebody's transgender and the parents know that they're just absolutely miserable, I think there needs to be some sort of legal way to get the surgery done in extreme cases, right? Regardless of if there's a ban under 18. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there would have to be some sort of exception process, because I wouldn't, and normally I'm more of a fan of the government leaving people alone and letting people do what they want to do. And I don't know, maybe it's better to let anyone who wants gender affirming surgery to do it. And if they were just following a trend, I guess that's a good lesson they learned. And if they weren't, then they were able to take care of their life and feel comfortable finally for the first time. I don't know. It's interesting. I can only imagine, though, that any minor that gets the surgery and then later decided it was a trend probably has some good legal recourse against the doctor who performed the surgery, possibly.
Well, they're definitely going to have some scarring, potential infertility issues that they're going to deal with for the rest of their life. When it comes to adults, I think that adults should be able to do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anybody else. So yeah, that's a pretty easy line in the sand for me to draw. But like I say, the issue becomes when you're under the age of majority, which we don't have a clear age of majority in the United States. But if you're under the age of majority, you're not responsible for your own actions. Largely, you don't have the same legal repercussions if you commit crimes. You don't have the same. Yeah, I was going to say
it's strange when minors commit crimes, because it kind of depends on the severity of the crime if they choose to try them as an adult.
Yeah, and the more serious the crime, the more likely it is they'll get charged as an adult.
And of course, the closer to adulthood, I guess in that case, which would be 18, they are, the more likely they are to be tried as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're 15 and you have 3 felonies, your third felony is probably going to be charged as an adult.
Yeah.
And there are 15-year-olds that have 3 felonies, unfortunately. But
yeah,
it's a very sensitive issue. But I mean, I've talked with 15-year-olds. I don't think a 15-year-old is capable of making a decision for himself.
Yeah,
at least not the ones that I've talked to recently.
Well, I mean, they can decide like what roller coaster to ride at the amusement park, but
right.
And everybody does
serious decisions.
No, I know, and I also know people mature at different rates, and it kind of depends on your parenting and how you're being interacted with by adults too. I know that I felt like, I mean, it's tough because when I was in high school, I was like, why do I have to listen to all these adults? Like I was a good student and got good grades and everything. It was just kind of like, I'm ready for people to take me seriously, which it's tough because like looking back now, I'm like, okay, 15-year-old me. Yeah, you had your shit together then, not, but I don't know. Like on one hand, it's like, why not treat people like adults? But again, like you're not going to let a 12-year-old be a guest on our podcast and smoke down a cigar and drink scotch, So like you said, there's like adults should be able to do whatever they want, but we have laws in place to kind of protect children from, I don't know if it's really harm. I guess it's harm because I know drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, cigarette smoking or vaping all have kind of developmental consequences if you do them when your body's still developing.
Oh, yes.
I mean, to an excess, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure if you take one puff off of a joint or something, you're not going to be irreparably damaged, but...
Yeah, if a child starts smoking marijuana at 9 years old, there's probably going to be some serious consequences. Regularly consumes marijuana.
Yes.
And I think marijuana should be legal. I think every drug should be legal. If people want to destroy their own lives, that's their right. But that's the right as an adult, not as a minor.
Yes. No, I'm with you. I think all that stuff should be legal.
I think the biggest thing that isn't said, a lot of these people, I would venture to guess, I would bet money that a lot of the supporters of this bill in Nebraska would prefer just to ban transgendered people in the state of Nebraska, period.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that most of these bills, one way or the other, are too far. Like, they're both like totalitarian. Like either way you go, or one's like totalitarian and one's like, hey, free love for all or something like that. Like everybody can, you want gender affirming surgery? Go get it. Everybody can have it. And the other one is like, nobody can have gender reassignment surgery at all. We hate people that aren't their genders that they were born with. And,
right.
That's what I mean. There's got to be a middle ground because there are people that legitimately struggle with this. And, I would go so far to say as need this surgery.
Well, it's generally accepted that for people with gender dysphoria, the only known treatment is to go through a transition. Because not doing so has pretty serious mental health consequences for those people.
Yes.
And that's accepted by the majority of educated people, I think.
Yeah. But and that's what I mean. I think we need to have a law that can protect people that are following a fad while still serving those people that legitimately need it.
We're so early in this current trend or current awareness that even bringing up the concept that some of this is a fad is considered offensive by some.
And I'm fine with that. I mean, it's an awfully expensive thing to be a fad. Just surgery, healthcare in our country, and any kind of surgery to be a fad, regardless of what it is an awfully expensive fad, in my opinion. But, like you were saying, that the children are very impressionable, and puberty is a very confusing time for everyone, at least if I'm recalling correctly. So
there's a lot of changes, and you're just basically just starting to become a conscientious person, and it's definitely a interesting time in everybody's life, I would think. This whole transgendered thing is really, it's only something that middle class people worry about. If you're super poor, this is not on your radar. I bet you there's not nearly the same percentages of transgender people in Appalachia or the inner city as there is in the suburbs. You know what I mean? Like, this is kind of a trend in the affluent communities.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of goes back to our Amish episode, right? When I was asking if there were homosexual Amish people. Mm-hmm. And you said no because they didn't know about it. But I feel that let's go with like legit cases. There's probably the same percentage of legit cases all over the place, and there probably has been throughout history. It's just we don't have the data to support it. You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. I would assume that that's the case.
Yeah. And so people in Appalachia or wherever might not know what it's called, but they might be like, hey, that person dresses kind of like mannish, but they were born a girl. And then it's just kind of like left at that, because there's not much else that they can do. Or maybe they don't get to do anything and they commit suicide and nobody knows that it was because of gender dysmorphia. So, sure. I don't know. I think it's tough to try and make kind of bold statements about it because certainly there were homosexuals before same-sex marriage passed in the legislation. You know what I mean? And there were black people before desegregation happened. So, I mean, it's hard to measure some of that stuff.
It's extremely difficult to measure. This is not an aside, but it kind of is. I feel really bad for the tomboys and metrosexuals. Which are kind of the same thing, but one's a man and one's a woman, Because I see a lot of women, especially who are in their 50s, who are heterosexual, but who are tomboys. And the same with men. You see these men that are pretty flamboyant dressers, but they're with women. So I think that those people they're old enough to where none of this crap is going to affect them. But if you're 14 and you're a tomboy, I bet you it's a pretty confusing time to be growing up as a teenager right now.
Yeah.
I know at least where I went to school, it was always like a stereotype that the softball players who were girls were lesbians. And that certainly, there wasn't 35 lesbians on that field.
No, I mean, it depends on what movies you're watching, but probably not.
No, not in my town. I'm sure there were a few lesbians on the team, but maybe. I don't know. I don't even remember who was a softball player, but...
Well, and I'm sure the same is true for any sport, whether it's male or female. There's just a fact of life.
Right. That was the joke, though. Oh, yeah, they're all lesbians.
No, yeah,
I don't
get
know
it.
why. Yeah. Maybe they were a little bit more muscular.
I heard all male bowlers were non-transitioning lesbians.
That's correct. That is correct.
So I don't want to like crimp your style and everything, but for the life of me, I can't get this cigar to draw.
Really? You know,
like
gosh
it's
darn
lit.
it. I'm having a grand old time with this thing.
Yeah, I puff and I puff and I puff and I don't get any smoke in my mouth, and it's it's lit and smoking on the other end.
Do you have a poker to poke, like a pipe tool?
No, I've got. I'm looking at. I hung some more pegboard in my garage today, and I'm looking at all my tools arrayed out on the thing here. But the smallest thing I would have is kind of like a screwdriver, but I think that's a little bit too big. Ooh,
Yeah,
maybe I have
depending
a nail.
on the size of the screwdriver. Maybe if you had a double lock.
Maybe I have a nail.
Yeah, a small nail.
I've got some big nails. We grow them big here.
I see. No finished nails for Nate. All trim is put up with 16 penny.
If you can't feel it going in, what's the point? I don't know. I got a really long screw that's like gross and icky. I don't know if I want to do that. I'll keep looking. You guys keep talking.
Yes. Vamp.
Oh wait, here we go. I've got some bright wire nails, 1 inch. I'll try that.
Nice. Give it a shot at least.
Yeah, I don't know. So like my humidity in the humidor was a little bit higher than it normally is, but I don't know if that's really gonna. Oh man, whatever, that nail did the trick, I think.
Hopefully so.
Oh, there we go. I guess it was just really tight down at the torpedo end, and I've heard that before.
Yeah, so I've seen guys have to poke.
It's so tight at the torpedo end.
Yes. So when I was in college, I knew one transgendered woman who was going through this teaching program at the same time.
Okay.
And this person would go to class as a man and then go to these conferences and big events as a woman. It was always interesting. And then they would pretend like they weren't the other person, seemingly. You know what I mean? Because I talked to the person in class when they were when dressing and acting like a man. But at these things, I would sit at the same table and they wouldn't talk to me.
Okay, that's a little strange.
It was really weird. And a really nice person. I got along well with them. But just interesting behavior. You know, I'm sure that this was in the mid 2000s. I'm sure that it was a very tough thing to do for them at that time. Especially in like not a major city. It was a large area, sure. But it wasn't like Chicago or something.
Yeah.
But I don't remember anybody being transgender when I was in high school.
I don't really keep up with my high school classmates, but I don't think I heard of anyone being transgender from there. But I graduated with 89 people, so.
Right. I'm sure that there's at least one transgender person that was there. They weren't open about it in high school, or if they were, I didn't know them.
Yeah. And I mean, whatever. They might not have been. So like for me, they might have been there when I was there, but they might not have been in my grade.
Right. We had open homosexuals. And Sarah and I were talking about this. This was like right after September 11th, and there was not a lot of bullying going on at that time. It was very discouraged with all the school shootings and stuff that were going on. It was really frowned on. From what I gather, bullying is becoming a bigger issue in high schools now.
Okay.
Which is weird. I talked to my nieces and nephews, and they're around that age, and apparently bullying is back in a way that it wasn't when I was in school. It just wasn't considered a cool thing to do, or it wasn't socially acceptable amongst my peer group, at least. So,
well, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
No.
But that kind of goes back to our thing where, and I mean, so bullying happens at all ages, but just at work, it's just called being insubordinate if your boss is bullying you, so then it's your fault. And I guess usually with bullying, people try and blame the victim more so than the bully. I don't know. I don't know that we really had bullies in our I'm sure we did in our high school, but like I said, it's a small class, and I don't know.
Yeah. When I was an apprentice, that was like a pretty standard practice to make first through third year apprentices have a pretty difficult time at their job. But it's all part of the process.
Yeah, and I think hazing is different.
Yeah, it's a lot of hazing and causing stress on purpose because until you hit like your fourth or fifth year, you're not really allowed to work with live electricity, and that's extremely stressful. So they want to weed people out that can't handle pressure and stress because they're dangerous to themselves and to other people. And you just got to get rid of them, unfortunately. It's not a very nice way to look at it, but it's the truth.
Well, and you know what? That happens in a lot more jobs than people want to admit. Because a lot of jobs have like probationary periods, even if you're not working with, live electricity or lions and tigers or whatever it might be. But a lot of jobs have kind of those probationary periods where, maybe you interviewed well and you had good references, but maybe you just can't cut it, And so that's why they have those probationary periods, because it's pretty much like you don't get a lot of the benefits or have a lot of the protections. So if you fuck up, they can say bye-bye. Yeah,
and certain professions are going to have a higher failure rate than others,
Yeah.
By design. That's not a bad thing, really, unless you're one of the people that failed. But then, you got to be resilient, find something else to do.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing that I wanted to mention about minors and piercings, tattoos, and surgeries and other things. Because I'm really not trying to single out transgender. Part of life is that you can't always get what you want right away. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it could be a toddler in a toy store who wants all the toys. Not our toddler, but you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
There's things that we have very grown-up discussions about with our toddler. No, you can't do that. Why? So yeah, very well rationalized, thought out arguments from her. Delayed gratification is definitely kind of like a thing in life, and it's tough with social media and like TikToks and kind of like the instant messaging and instant stuff and all the time. And I started reading. I read a couple books recently, and I don't know if they really kind of fit here, but I'm going to see if you've heard of either of them. And one was really short. It took me like an hour to read it, but it was Gifts from the Sea by Charles Lindbergh's wife. I can't remember what her name is off the top of my head right now.
Mrs.
Lindbergh. And I'm not trying, and I know, so like this is a terrible time for me to space on her name. Especially when we're talking about trans, and now I'm like, the author is, I have to define her by her husband, who's a man, who I remember, and not what her actual name is, right? So I apologize. That was not my intent.
I'm guessing she's not from Little Falls, Minnesota.
Probably not. She's a fairly prolific author.
Okay.
But basically she was, and they were living, or she was living, I think they were living in New York, or just outside of New York City. And she went to this like beach house for, I don't know, a week or a month or something. And she was basically just talking about how like there's all these like societal pressures on her, kind of just as a woman or an adult. And, like, hey, I got friends, but when I go hang out with my friends, like we've only got limited time to hang out. So we're always just talking, and we're not just like quiet with each other. You know what I mean? And just kind of like using her vacation at the beach to kind of, like what you said, you need to go out in the woods and be alone for a little bit. That's where you get your thinking done, or that's where you can be introspective. And so it was very, very interesting. I really enjoyed the book. It was really good, and so like going out there, but she's talking about all these different pressures and all of this stuff. And so, thinking about, emails now at work, or like if you don't respond to the email within 5 minutes, and it's like, no, that's what the chat is for. That's what the messaging is for. You don't email me and expect me to get back to you. We talked about this on a previous episode where you're like, I check my email like once or twice a day. And then I'm also reading The Dawn of Everything, which I guess is kind of like the counterpoint or different train of thought as the book Sapiens, which I have but haven't started to read yet. But they're going through and kind of a lot of these anthropologists are trying to figure out where like inequality came from, right? And so the dawn of everything is trying to focus on American societies before Europeanization, which is a term, I think, right? Colonialism.
Yeah, something like that.
And basically, it's interesting, and I don't, like I'm not a historian and I'm not an anthropologist, but it's fascinating because they're talking about the French, in like, I don't know, 17 something, came over and they're talking to the Wendats and the Algonquins, and they're like, we're so much better than you, and we've got all this stuff, and they're like, wait, so you take all your orders from a king? Like, our chief can't even tell us what to do. If we don't want to do it, we just don't do it. And so it was kind of like, and the women were not, they were, I guess, sexually liberated in the tribes, some of the tribes anyway, where they could kind of choose, until they got married anyway, they could kind of like do whatever they wanted with whoever they wanted until they were married. But, I don't know, it was kind of interesting because the native tribes were like, we don't have to follow that kind of, I can't remember the word for it, but the like the rule of just somebody who's different than you, like a monarch or whatever. And, and I guess the concept of having beggars in France was like mind blowing to these tribes because they kind of take care of their own. I mean, certainly there were some tribes members that were kind of, heavy air quotes, more wealthy than others or had more status or had more whatever, but everybody ate.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. This is very loosely related, but in the United States, we're, at least in the dialogue, people are obsessed with freedom, And it's kind of humorous because most people spend the majority of their life working. And during my work hours, I'm not free to do what I want to do. Like, I'm a cog in the machine, just like everybody else. Like, I have very little autonomy. I mean, my job's a little different where I do have a lot of autonomy in how I do things, but I'm always responding to emergencies. So I do have to go and take care of this stuff. I don't really have the choice to just slough it off and do whatever I want.
I mean, you have autonomy in some sense, same with me, like I'm salaried and I work from home. So there's stuff that I have to do regardless of how stupid I think it is to have to do it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people, we have not unique jobs, but we have good careers going on. A lot of people don't have any autonomy at their work. If you're working on an assembly line or something.
Yeah. Or a call center.
Or for Amazon. Or
Elon Musk, if you're one of those two employees that are still left.
Right. There's plenty of horror stories about American manufacturing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily manufacturing as it is like the assembly line type work.
Yeah.
Or if you had to work in an office under your supervisor directly all the time. I imagine that it's not very liberating.
That's not fun.
No. Maybe that's why there's so much obsession with freedom, is because people aren't free for the most part.
Well, that was kind of the interesting point about at least these few chapters I've read in The Dawn of Everything, where the French thought they were more free than the native tribes, but they really weren't in comparison. I mean, the French had more, let's say, like technological advances. I don't think, and did any of the native tribes have like written words? Like,
I don't think so.
And
well, no, that's not true because the Aztecs and the Mayans, they did.
They did. But like the North American tribes, I don't know if they really had written stuff, or maybe they had kind of like hieroglyphs or something.
I don't think so. I think that what the heck they call them, like the Mississippian civilization that predated colonialization. I think they might have had written records.
Okay.
I think the Navajo might have had written records, but they were more of a farming type society.
Okay,
they weren't hunter-gatherers. And so were the Mississippian culture. They were farmers.
Okay. Because that was the interesting thing, is like the French were saying that they were free and they wanted the native tribes to be free, and the native tribes are like, you guys aren't free. Like, you tell me about this king all the time and like all these things you have to do and your like obligations, and That's not freedom. Like if the chief tells me to go like kill an elk, if I don't feel like it, I'm just like, nah, like whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know.
Do what I want.
It's interesting.
So, yeah, this is a total tangent, but writing systems usually come about when you have to take stock of surpluses and grains and things like that. So the numbering system comes about.
Okay, yeah.
And then the writing system comes about so that you could say, I have so many bushels of wheat stored.
Well, especially if you have like debts, you need writing.
Right. Debt and taxes.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the first, this is years ago when I was learning about like the ancient Near East, but the first written records that we had, at least then, were tax reports.
Yep.
So I guess government hasn't changed for 7,000 years.
And there's a fair amount of writing down the spoken word stories, that have passed down orally through generations, as a way of like preserving them. But it's interesting because as soon as you start writing, you kind of lose the oral tradition as like a side effect.
Oh, of course. Of course. The Navajo claim that they still have a active oral tradition with a lot of their ceremonies.
Oh, okay.
That resulted from the persecution by the Catholics, the Spanish Catholics down there. And of course, there's no way to verify that because they're not sharing that information with outside of their cultural group. So we have to take it on their word, which there's no reason to believe it's lying.
Well, yeah, and there'd be no way to check. Like you're not going to infiltrate their ceremonies.
No, we're not going to infiltrate the Navajo.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I mean, if they're doing that, then that's cool. Like that's neat. I sometimes wonder, like, if we still did like the oral traditions, maybe we wouldn't have like the Star Wars sequel trilogy be so bad writing wise.
Oh,
but
yeah, we were talking about that, my buddies and I here, and if they would have brought back Darth Jar Jar, movie 9, I would have forgiven them all their sins.
Yeah. Like if you're gonna fuck it up, just fuck it up hard. And don't be ashamed. So, but
it's not even fucking it up. Darth Jar Jar's,
he's a fan favorite theory. We'll say
he is. He's of mine for sure. Yeah.
So, where are you at in your stick?
I got 2 inches left or so.
Okay, I've got like 4 inches left, but I was fighting it for a long time, and I still am kind of poking it every once in a while to keep it loose. I don't know, man. It's just. This one stick is not very good draw wise. It tastes fine.
Sure. Well, maybe we'll have to redo it. I think I have more of these.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like, I'm not saying it's not good enough to smoke again, but it'd be one where it'd be like, I'll smoke it again, but probably not on the show.
Sure.
And I understand that there's a lot of, manufacturing variances and maybe because my humidor is running a little higher than it normally does, humidity wise, is contributing. But, torpedoes, like, if you said, a lot of people need to poke the torpedoes, maybe I'm just not aware of that. So.
Oh, I've seen them. I've seen people do it. I don't know if it's necessary. I've never had that much of an issue myself.
Yeah. And this one was fine for the first, I think the first third it was, but then about, a third of the way in, I was getting no smoke in my mouth, and I'm not stressed, and I'm not like clamping down with my teeth. Like there's not bite marks in the stick. So I'm not smoking it incorrectly as far as I know.
Mine's actually, now I have like 2 inches left. It's getting a little sour.
Okay.
For me. Which is to be expected because it was a fairly long stick. I think we had 6 inches. I think they were Toros.
Yeah.
And they're a fairly narrow gauge.
Yep.
Maybe a 54, it looks like. Just, I don't know the actual stats for anybody who's wondering. I did not look it up. I'm just guessing from experience.
Yep.
And that has a tendency to get a little sour. Oh, there we go. Now it's not sour. I let it sit for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like the concept of freedom. And I think we can tie it back, and I think it'll make sense. It could just be reaching and stretching on our part, but the concept of freedom and what you're allowed to do or what freedom means to you. And if you're a fan of Team America, freedom costs $1.05, but probably now with inflation, like $3.50. But it's like you want everybody to be free. You want everybody to have freedom and be happy. And
no, you and I want that. I think a lot of people say they want freedom
for them, but nobody else.
They don't really mean that. They want exactly. I want people to be free to do what they want as long as what they want isn't hurting other people.
Well, yeah, and other people are like, I want everybody to be free as long as their view of freedom is the same as mine, and that's just not freedom, And you and I want people to be free. We've talked about this, and by and large, I don't care what people do. If you want to do really hard and dangerous drugs, that's on you. You want to drive a 2004 mostly rusted out Honda Civic that you're trying to get to 400,000 miles, that's on me. I mean, you.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go backpacking and not bring any water and try to survive using a filter and river water, that's your choice.
As long as you're of the age of majority.
Right. I went winter camping and stuff before I was 18.
Oh, well, so did
pretty dangerous.
but I went with, like other adults in the Boy Scouts. You know what I mean? Like,
oh no, I went camping with like my other teenage friends, idiots. We easily could have froze to death. Yeah. So I wasn't bringing a wall tent and a heater like I do now.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the thing, man. Like, I've done so much camping for being in Boy Scouts since first grade that when somebody's like, do you want to go camping? Like, you're good at it, right? You're an Eagle Scout. And I'm like, well, I'm an Eagle Scout and I'm good at camping, but I'd really rather just stay in a hotel where I can get a shower and like the continental breakfast or whatever. I don't really need to be out in the woods camping.
The term "good at camping" is that said by people who don't know or who haven't gone camping? I mean, how do you be bad at camping?
Oh, you can be really terrible at camping. Let me tell you the ways. You can put the rain fly on the wrong way, or just decide you don't need a rain fly. You can put your ground tarp on the wrong way, so all the dew collects underneath your tent, and you wake up in an inch of water. You can decide not to stake down your tent. You can put your tent in a dangerous location. You can not know how to start a fire. You cannot bring the appropriate supplies that you need to take care of yourself while camping. And then you have to rely on said Eagle Scout to bail you out of whatever situation you got yourself into. So there's lots of ways to be bad at camping. And, I still enjoy camping.
We went to a big concert and we forgot our rain fly and I had to go buy a big ass tarp.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought it was in the bag with the tent.
But you at least knew it was missing and you needed it. So that's not the same as being bad at camping. But you could be bad at camping. You can be bad at a lot of things. And I'm bad at a lot of things too. And I still enjoy camping, but I enjoy more being able to bring everything that I want to bring. And
sure,
a little bit more modern stuff. I mean, I bought a Dutch oven, and I just love cooking in that thing and just making food. But it takes a long time to cook in there. And but it's really good food and it's easy cleanup and whatever. And like sitting around the campfire and, but it's kind of like the weather has to be good and I don't really want to go camp. And if it's going to be raining the whole time, and I don't know, I guess I've done so much camping. I'm kind of like a curmudgeon about camping now, where it's like, yeah, I could, sure. But I mean, it's fun. It's fun if you have the right people to go with, I guess, is more so.
It certainly is. I know that I hate camping in the rain, but I still go paddle fishing every year, and it rains or snows or both every fucking year. Yep. And it's miserable every time. Yeah, don't get stuck someplace without your tent, I can tell you that. I had to do that one year.
Okay.
I had to sleep on the floor of somebody else's tent.
Yep.
That was no fun.
Yeah, that's the one thing.
I wouldn't call that bad at camping. That was just bad at being stuck on an island.
Well, there's always those circumstances that come up, and even no matter how much you try and prepare, you're gonna get caught at one point in something that was not ideal. And the one thing that I need to get yet is decent sleeping, because as a kid I could sleep on like a 1-inch inflatable air mattress, but now I'm kind of like, I need something comfortable to sleep on. So when camping. But we've got a nice big tent.
Yeah, we have a huge tent. We can fit a queen-size bed in it and nightstands.
Yeah. And see, that's and
that's important.
You didn't go to scout camp with a queen-size bed and nightstands. There would have been all sorts of, let's just say, bullying.
Okay. The Boy Scouts were bullies in allegedly in Wisconsin.
I think they're bullies everywhere. I mean, I don't mean it, like in a super mean way, but you certainly would have gotten some jokes thrown your way if you were like, well, okay, so like, can somebody help me carry my nightstands into my tent? And people would be like, what? But, like for scout camp, we slept in canvas A-frame tents, and there was no floor. They were, old military style. And so you had to kind of pack all of your stuff. You'd get one of those totes from like Walmart or Target or something. And you'd pack all your stuff in there because it was a dirt floor and you were sleeping on the army cots, also made out of canvas. And when it would rain, the water would like run through your tent like a river. So if you packed a duffel bag, all your stuff's wet, So you're not really bringing a queen size bed and nightstands to that.
That's when Sarah and I go together.
Yeah.
This year we're gonna go minimalistic, and I'm gonna sleep in a hammock.
Okay.
For paddle fishing.
Oh yeah.
And we'll see how that goes. I got all the underquilt and the good sleeping bag and
okay, yeah.
Insulated pad and all that sort of junk.
Yep.
So that when it gets down to 0, I'm not going to freeze to death. That's the biggest goal.
Yep.
Might not be comfortable, but I won't die.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll see. It'll probably end up being 65 degrees and sunny and beautiful the whole time.
Well, that's the hope. That is the hope.
That is the hope.
Yep. So
I have about an inch left. It's not burning my fingers, but you're not enjoying your cigar anymore. So
yeah, probably not. I mean, it's fine. It's I've been poking it. I don't know. It's so tight. It's so tight.
It's so tight.
Yeah. So for those of our listeners who might fall asleep listening to us, I hope you wake up when I'm like so tight.
It's a shout out to the comment section.
But anyway, that we don't even have. But maybe we will at some point. Maybe we will find a way to interact with some of you out there. I hope that you haven't been enraged by our topic choice this episode. Like Mike and like Mike and I said, we want everybody to be free to make their own decisions with the understanding that at certain ages, bigger decisions aren't necessarily the forte of young people. But I really do. I feel like there needs to be some protection for youth, and there needs to be a logical exception to the main rule where it is necessary, because, and you and I both said it, like it's necessary. Like that's the only cure for the gender dysmorphia. Thanks for listening.
Be safe. Have fun.